There we go. So we are recording. So where are we going to be traveling and flowing to today?
Well, the headline is called My Behaviours. So it's some particular personal behaviours that are bothering me, and I've been able to get as far as to be able to put them down into some sort of categorised list. And the list is probably a combination of things that I do that are just relating to me and myself and feelings and beliefs. And then there's a little bit about what I do to and with and towards other people. So I think reviewing and understanding these behaviours and let's call them unhelpful behaviours or potentially unhelpful behaviours, understanding something about them so that I can keep what I need to keep and bin what I need to bin. So that's the topic.
And so how does this relate to your overarching piece of work that we're doing together about being in flow?
So I think what it is that these are, we are with ourselves, aren't we? With our brains, with our thoughts, every second of every day. And the big picture thoughts are one thing, but these are the sort of the obstacles and the distractions and the things that get in the way. So if the last session about my health was about getting myself sort of focused and energized and able to manage my day, these are all, I think this is all the pitfalls, right? These are all the trips and tracks and things that make me stumble, things that have got potential to really be great and wonderful and open up things, but also when I'm doing them badly or wrong or in a confused way, I just think are just like massive blocks and barriers. I think so. They really are. They are like the sort of the counter to me being in flow potentially.
Okay, so which is really interesting, isn't it? Because it sounds like you've already done some reflection on this as well. So if we do this piece of work, what do you want to come out of this piece of work then?
Well, I think I don't think it's like as simple as saying keep that and drop that, but I think it's definitely a bit of understanding why some of these behaviours seem to be so important to me, and trying to see where the helpful elements are, because there's nothing on the list that is just like all bad. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not stealing things at the charity shop, it's not like that, but there are, so everything is all in this sort of black and white shades of grey. So trying to understand what's helpful, so what can be kept, but more importantly, why at 53 years of age these things are still something of a mystery to me and something of a driver. So I think the understanding aspect is really important, and I'm trusting, as with last time, I'm trusting that maybe some actions come from today, but actually it's probably then over the next week or couple of weeks, the continuing mulling will allow these things to consolidate.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you say it's about understanding why these things are still going on, if there's something that is not helpful, or even why do some things that are helpful continue, that sort of thing. So how do we do this together?
Well, it feels to me like there's a bit of backstory, but not a lot.
As there always is with you.
It's always going to be, I know I could spend a day on backstories, and I'm doing my best not to. But I think there's a bit of backstory, okay. And then I think that there's something about. I remember a coaching session we did a few years ago when I wrote down half a dozen things, and for me there was no connection between them. But 20 minutes in, something you asked meant that there was a connection. So, potentially you'll see or ask things that might help us tie up some of these things. I think I probably need some challenge, because I think that there's probably some blind spots here, or at least some doubt, and some confusion.
Okay, so offering patterns, as you say, offer some challenge, or really get you to think a bit more deeply, perhaps, about some things.
Definitely.
I think definitely that way.
Yeah,
okay.
I think definitely some deepening thinking, because there's plenty of these things that I've said to myself, why, what, how? Well,
yeah.
But actually talking, and I probably haven't talked this stuff out loud before. I mean, and you can imagine some of these things that, you know, I might have mentioned one or two of these things in passing, or had a chat with Abigail, or it's come up because I've done but actually this is probably my first time of really putting these under the spotlight, and it feels quite mature in a way. You know, it feels a bit like, you know, people walk around with their patterns, don't they? And sort of say, well, that's, you know, that's me, you know.
Okay.
And I'm not interested in being a fixed article. I'm very interested in finding out about fluidity.
Oh yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? Because this is about you going into flow, not, as you say, fixing yourself, because there's nothing to fix. It's about how do you maintain flow going forward, and even down to our conversation a bit earlier about this is not something that you're going to fix and then that's it for the rest of your time. This is about how do you maintain that fluidity even in your body, let alone everything else. Okay, cool. So we got about 35 minutes to do this. How much of the backstory do I need?
Well, I'll give you the headings that I wrote down, because you'll see what you'll see. These seems to be the thing. So there's 5. 4 of them are internal and my own behaviours. One is not completing tasks, and by that I mean, you know, do a DIY job and the packing away, the tidying away type of thing. You know, Abigail always knows when I've done a job because there's something emerging. Similarly, you know, the desk is 90% clear, but it's not 100% clear. So there's a pattern of not completing tasks. Alongside that, there's this, I've called it the paradox of the uncompleted task, which means, like, you know, if you look behind me, you know, and you see all those books, that is an uncompleted task, and that slightly intimidates me in that, or slightly bothers me in the, like, there's all those books I need to read, you know, that, and you never get to the bottom of it, you know, so I'm bothered by that, in the same way as I'm bothered that if there's 30 emails that need clearing out. So I am always trying to complete a task, you know. So I have that. There's a paradox here from those two things. Because of that, I think it might even link cutting corners. So the idea of, well, I suppose the image is, you know, you get in the car, you drive down the road, and then when the machine starts beeping at you, then put the seatbelt on, rather than, I was behind someone this morning at the petrol station getting really frustrated because she was doing it properly. You know, she got back in her car, she checked the bloody mirror, and I'm like, it might have been 45 seconds of my life that I lost, right? But I observed her doing it properly, and I wouldn't have done that. I would have been like halfway down the road and then putting my glasses back on and turning my sat nav, you know, so that type of cutting corner behaviour, which I think is really endemic for me. And then linked to that is not double checking, and then getting into trouble. And sometimes, like, it's obvious the things that need to double check. You know, if you're going on a journey, you need to check the train times. But actually, do you need to recheck the train time in the morning just in case there's been another further delay or cancellation? And I find often something happens and I ask myself, how come I didn't realise that this bit could have been double checked? You know, it wasn't obvious to me. You know, like it's not obvious. I can't even think of an example now, but like the idea that actually something comes out, you think, oh well, I didn't know that cable wouldn't fit into that thing. How would I know to double check that thing until it happens, type of thing. Mm-hmm. So they're the 4, I think, big ones about my own behaviour. But I don't know if this is linked or if this is just a distraction, but I wrote it anyway, which is one external behaviour wanting to comment on, judge, and criticise things that are not right out there. You know, so when we had lunch, we talked a bit about, or didn't really like that ICF conference being so corporate-y and wanting to dig into that, you know. Or we arrived in Folkestone the other day on a Saturday morning on a really busy touristy day in the car, and they closed the motorway for 2 junctions, and so I'm thinking all these poor French and German people arriving, not knowing what the hell to do. And I wanted to write to someone. I'm like, I want to, you know. So I don't know if that links. I don't know if that all links into this sort of, maybe there's something here about perfectionism, or I don't know, but I just thought, okay, well that seems to be something that goes into this mix of me and my behaviours and what's triggering me and driving me. So I suppose that's enough. I mean, there's 25,000 stories related to each of those, but does that give you a bit of a flavour?
Yeah, it does, and it's also raises a curiosity in me, because I understand what you're saying, and I love the metaphors you're using for each of these pieces. The wondering in me is what's this all about right now? That these come up right now for you?
Well, I think it's, it's funny. I was driving along this morning thinking, I'm so stimulated by everything that I'm doing with my work. And then a small voice, I don't know where the hell it came from, said, "Oh, I'm a bit bored." And I'm not actually bored, but I think what I am is not under stress. It's not like, where's the next bit of work coming from? Where's the next money coming from? All those type of things. So I've moved away from that sort of frantic behaviour of, got to rush around to go to every networking meeting, of all those type of things, towards something that is much more consolidatory, and realizing actually that there's a core of these things that are really good and really useful, but there's definitely some things that are in my way, and I think it's a sense of just not being able to be okay with myself. I think it's like that idea of actually to know that where I am at is absolutely fine, like that. I don't have to fix something. Actually, I can keep on improving, but where I'm at is fine. And it feels like these are all things that send the message that says, I actually underneath it all, I'm not quite fine. I think that's where it's coming from.
Okay, and yet you say, I don't want to fix this. So what do you want to do with this?
The words that just came up were understand and probably adapt, nuance, tweak. Yeah, it's not fixing, because I'm, if you asked me to write positives for all of those, I could, absolutely write positives. I'm the only, or I'm one of very few people that I know who, every single book I read, they sit in a pile on my desk with the little highlighted notes in it until I've written them up in my logs, and then I send out summaries. So I've got a really high level of rigor and conscientiousness with all of it. Loads of good stuff going on, but it's almost like Frankenstein's monster. It's like it's a bit unstoppable, a bit uncontrollable. I did a sum the other day. I looked in France. The bookcase we've got is probably got 40 or 50 books, and Abs reads a book in a day, adds into it, says, "Oh, it's great, you should read that." It goes in the thing. And then all my French and my Italian books, I reckon there's about 15 years worth of holiday reading in there from now. So that takes me to 68, and that's before Abigail keeps on shoving in. So it's like, well, this must be an unhelpful driver. It must be. It's like I'm not relaxed about the fact, and I can only be relaxed, right, when every book in my whole house is read. Well, that's impossible,
Yeah.
So so I'm getting that there's a nonsense that I don't quite understand.
Okay, because using your words, I mean, it is a bit, yes, there's a nonsense there, and I think it's a nice word. It's not saying this is nonsense. It's a non-sense piece of work to do. How are we going to do this then? How are we going to unpick this?
Well, I don't know. I mean, when I said nonsense, it just made me think about, I've been into people's houses who have no books. Okay, so this is a bit my judgment thing, and are they happier? That sense of the sort of, I don't want to call it ignorant bliss, but that sort of sense of inner contentment, and actually not restless, not seeking, not looking, but just letting life sort of absorb them and take it on. That's in some ways I envy that, but in other ways it's really an anathema to me. You know, it's like, actually, I am all these things I'm talking about. It's probably because I'm quite stimulated. I think how to do this, I think I have to try and understand some of the benefits of these things, understand why I haven't just been able to put them to one side and say, that's not important to me.
So here's the curious thing. Is it the benefit of not completing tasks, not cutting corners, not double checking? Or is it the benefits of doing the opposite?
I think there's a sort of a perceived benefit, isn't it? Like cutting a corner means that I churn through 50 tasks, you know, whereas not cutting a corner means I complete 20. It's that type of thing. So it's a so it's a perception that I'm getting done more. So and sometimes, you know, sometimes cutting a corner is fine because it doesn't matter, you know. It doesn't matter that I didn't metaphorically or even actually do up my shoelaces, you know, it doesn't matter because I didn't stumble by the time I got to the end of the road. But I know it doesn't feel right, you know. So I think that, yeah, I don't know if it is a benefit of them or the benefit of the opposite. I mean, the double checking thing is, you know, I look at that and I think, when I see people who really, really rigorously double check, I think this is really slow and this is really turgid. I rent flats, and I once rented a flat to this guy who just on the sort of the inspection thing took 2.5 hours. He took out every single light bulb, right? Every single, and I've never seen anything like it. And all right, okay, that is maybe the extreme end of the situation, but nevertheless, I think it's like, I'm definitely in there. Come on, let's go. And yet, I know, I would never send out an email without double checking it. I mean, I might send a text, but I wouldn't send an email without double checking. I wouldn't put a blog together. I reread. I often put systems in so that someone else is reading my stuff before, that type of thing. But I think I'm just there's just something about all of this. It's just being fast. It's just being very, very sort of action orientated and wanting to be dynamic.
So what I'm noticing here is, as you're describing things like double checking, when other people will either see it or be involved in it when you do it.
Yeah.
But when it's for you, or I could say even for your family, because like doing a DIY and not putting the tools away is impacting your family.
Yeah.
That's when you don't do these things.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. And if I left this, a video of this coaching call in the training room and someone watched it who only knows me from the training room, they'd be, really? That's not what we see. That's not how we experience Charlie. I had some feedback from someone the other day, said, you really are the most organised and efficient person we know. And I forwarded the email on to Abigail because it just made me laugh so much. So I know I can do that. I absolutely know I can do that. Why do I not, what is it, that expression? The carpenter's gate always swings low. I won't do it for myself, but I'll do it. I am conscious of my reputation, of that. I am my external reputation. And so I don't want to get that bit wrong. Definitely not.
Right. So this is about your internal reputation, that you are, it would appear, you are more cavalier about your internal reputation than you are about your external.
Yeah, and cavalier, I mean, it's absolute. That would absolutely be a word that Abigail would use to describe me. It is very cavalier. But the whole, I must read every book on the bloody shelf, that's not cavalier,
No, but you're being cavalier with your personal requirements. You're saying you don't do it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's this really weird paradox. It's this being really cavalier, but then also being really conscientious, because it would be very easy. It should be easy anyway, for me to be able to say, do you know what? I am. I'm in a good enough place. Mm-hmm. With my coaching work, I got to a PCC. I'm a better trainer than most people because I've invested heavily, and I only train on things that I know well. I've got a good understanding of the personal development stuff. I was asked this really, really interesting question the other day. with my language learning, you know, I was talking to my neighbour in France and saying, you know, I like learning languages, and I, you know, and I like to learn a new language every year or every couple of years. And he's a Frenchman; he doesn't speak any other languages. And he said, "Why?" But he definitely meant, like, "Why the hell?" You know, it's like, that's really like, why? But why do you do that? You know, and it's a brilliant question, actually. You know, why do I do that? Why don't I say? Why don't I become bilingual? Like, as in, my French is so good, as good as the, you know, the French people I know in England, you know, rather than keep on collecting, keep on building, keep on saying that. So I can say I'm a polyglot and I speak 8 languages quite well, rather than 2 very well. Why? I don't know. You know, I can't answer that question.
So it's a bit like your uncompleted tasks, isn't it? Because a language, if you really wanted to speak it as a native, you'd have to keep working at it. Yeah. But there's a sense of good enough.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I have these frustrations in my language, because you know, they flow really well, and people say lovely things, and you know, I speak plenty of my language as well. But there's an element of, you know, I'm not a native speaker. I can't be a native speaker. I can't be bilingual in, like, so fluent in all of these languages. But I am one of very few people I know. You know, I've coached in Spanish. I've coached in French. I've trained in Spanish. I can do these things. Why I have this sort of yearning to keep on pushing on. I don't think I'd mind if it was just, if it was a sort of a light touch, and if I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. But there's an element of, you know, I saw an Italian friend of mine last night, and I was still a bit like, it was a bit clunkier than I want it to be. You know, it's not flowing, so I'm not getting to that level of competence. So yeah, I don't know. It feels to me all of these things are slightly messy and slightly. Yeah, don't understand.
They use the word flow again.
Yeah.
So there's a sense in the Italian that the frustration is because it doesn't flow. Yeah. It's not about it being perfect or native, but there's an element that says you want to be able to have at least a form of flowing conversation, is what I heard.
Yeah.
And if I look at the four corners that we're talking about, to some degree, not completing tasks and the uncompleted tasks, the paradox, and the cutting corners speaks to this piece around language learning. I would use that as an example. But it doesn't actually speak to the double checking piece.
Yeah, because you see, the double checking thing, that's about rigor, you know, and that's about real rigor. And rigor is, I like rigor, you know, and I am rigorous, and I think rigor and conscientiousness fits very well together. And I think it might just be almost like a byproduct of having too much, like too many interests, too much stimulation, too much going on. You know, the amount of things that I want to do and achieve, you know, it becomes a bit silly, you know, in a way. And whether they're big goals or small goals or personal goals, but they're all things that eat into time. And I think that if I had much smaller goals and much fewer goals, then I would be much happy to do much more double checking. But I don't want to do that. You know, I don't want to reduce goals. You know, I think I have someone in my mind he's not a nemesis at all, but he's a really good, like, the terrible warning of who I wouldn't want to be. You know, he gets back from his holiday, and within 2 days, back in the day, would have had all of his photos printed in albums with the corners, labels written, and nowadays he's got it all, you know, organised on the cloud and stuff. Because that's what he can do, because he's not coming back to the stimulation, you know, and he's quite happy to sort of be in that relative sort of vacuum place. It doesn't mean I'm a better person than him, but I think it means is that I know I can see that's a life that I don't want to live. So in a way, the not double checking is a bit of the risk and a bit of the byproduct of having goals, ambition, drive, and you know, a lot of sort of intellectual interests, I think, but it still is a pain in the ass.
So if you didn't have the double checking piece in there, because it sounds like it's a frustration more than anything, double checking. If that wasn't there, how would the other three feel?
Well, I think so. If let's say that my double checking thing is worse than, like, if we look at, you know, baseline average, most people in the world, right? So I'm worse than that. I'm too not doing enough double checking. If I was in the average, if I was what as much as other people generally do, and there's an expression, carpenters use this expression: measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
So if that was me, then I think I would be fine. So I don't think it's a big shift, actually. But I think of it as a massive shift. I think I imagine myself walking around like some sort of, you know, if you ever see a child coming out of school they've been given a letter, right, and they've been told they weren't paying attention, and they're not walking out of school like this, sort of they're buttoned up, but they've got their letter under the belt, they get the coat under the arm, they're having, you know, and they're tripping and haven't done the shoes up either. Right? I think that's my image of how I am constantly, and I don't think it's true. I think there's elements of that sometimes at times. I think it's in those moments when I think, oh, I just should have looked at Google Maps, you know, or you know, I could have checked that item hasn't got that safety feature. You know, it's that type of stuff. I think I'm quite lucky now. I can outsource quite a lot of this stuff to apps, because, you know, I can say, if we need to buy a fridge or something like that, I know I don't want to spend 3 hours on the checking. She doesn't mind, you know, so I can outsource some of it, but it's the things that I'm responsible for that.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, what do you want to do with this? Do you want to look at how to shift this? What is it?
Well, I think I want to. I think I want to make peace with the idea that someone with stimulation in their mind will always have pending stuff, and just make peace with it, and that I will always be halfway through a book, that I will always have things bubbling away, you know, and so that it's like redefining myself as redefining these things as these are behaviors of a learner. That's what you're a learner. You're in that place, you know. There's always something, you know. And I think moving away from the sort of the magpie thing, you know. I mean, I had an experience yesterday. I was tidying up my desk and I had all these brochures and all these glossy things that I picked up at the ICF conference. And I thought, well, let's see what's useful in there. And I came away with
a couple of things.
I wrote down 2 lines, 2 websites. The rest went in the bin. Very glossy, terrible for the environment. You know, it all had to go. So I think just putting myself in that place that says, you know, this is a behaviour of a learner, rather than this is a behaviour of a learner who's fine, rather than a learner who's frantically trying to finish everything. You know, I mean, I have.
So how do you believe in that? Because you said, I want to make peace with this and be okay with, and your 4 things that you've got there, there's nothing wrong with them, are they? But it's this, how do you make peace with it? So
I think that there's just something about, I think it will come up in another session when we talk about challenging people. I think it's fear of external judgment, but actually I've just got too much internal judgment going on here, just bubbling away, you know. I mean,
and you already said that actually stuff that other people see, this doesn't happen. It's only yourself and internally in your family that people see this.
Yeah. And, you know, and I think I can make peace with, you know, the teasing that I get, because I get quite a lot of teasing, and now the kids are old enough so they all join in, right? Even the bloody dog, right? You know, so I get plenty of teasing about it, and I think I'm learning to be a bit more resilient and robust and all right with that. But I think it's this idea of, actually, it is the internal judgment. You know, I think probably there are some things that I just need to change. You know, I need to I need to tidy up. I need to finish those little tasks. I know that. I need to. It's about rules. I need to be like half an hour before the end of the work day cleaning my desk. All that type of stuff that I know I can do. But actually, the big thing is it's the internal judgment. It's to say, I do much more than most, and I can always look around and see what I haven't done. It's easy to do that. But actually, I think I just need to start looking around and just knowing that at the end of every day, I would have done a load of things. I can't even remember the morning by the time I get to bed. I've done so much, So
well, I'm also wondering if there's something different between, because you keep saying, I need to do this, as opposed to I want to do this.
It's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, it does feel a bit like, clinging on to something, I mean, we've had the experience in our house where, mainly driven by Asher, but I think we're all up for it. We've all gone vegetarian, and it looks like we're on the road towards becoming vegans. No attachment, absolutely fine, not a problem. Need, want, no matter. It's fine. It's gone out of the way. But with this, it's like, there's a bit of how I see myself. The chap who learns loads of languages, the chap who people says, "Oh, you're so clever," and all that type of stuff. I think that there's a bit of I need to have a strong enough self-perception to be able to say, actually, completing or not completing, or reading or not reading, is not going to fundamentally change my self-view. It's not. I can't have an aspiration of, when I've done those things, I'm going to be good enough. It's like, actually, I'm a very good learner, and I'm a very good whatever. Be all right with that, and then just notice that this is the approach. It's because it is the paradox of the uncompleted task that is, I find, the most intimidating. Like, the others are frustrating and a bit annoying and a bit of, how come I haven't learned to do that? But that's the one that I find intimidating. Like, really, it's a strong word, but it does feel like that. It's like, why should I be intimidated by a bloody bookshelf?
Can I offer something?
Yeah.
As you were talking there, I just wondered, when you said uncompleted task is your real nightmare, I wonder if that's how you see yourself, as an uncompleted task.
That's very funny. Yeah, of course it is. I'm sure it is. It's like, I mean, and it's weird, isn't it, being in my 50s, because actually, the trajectory is going in a different way. I'm never going to have a six-pack or run, 100 meters in silly time. That it goes differently. And then we have it in. There are a few expressions that I've read, both Western and Eastern expressions, which are that sort of manage the paradox of, you're incomplete, but actually you're fine where you're at, yes. and the gap is the enjoyable aspiration rather than the intimidation. And I think that's not how I think it's sometimes how I feel, and I think it's how I feel when I've had a really good coaching session, or maybe when I've listened to a good coaching session and analysed it well, or I've done something, and actually in those moments it's not the external voice, it's not someone saying, "Oh, Charlie, you're great." It's definitely the internal voice and thinking, yeah, actually, that was good,
So is that what you're working on, is how to accept yourself as an uncompleted task, and knowing that that's good enough?
Yeah. It feels to me like it has to be. I read a few years ago, and I've referred to this quite a lot with loads of people. John Stuart Mill, he died in 1874, and it's been sort of worked out that he's the last person who could have been properly kept up to date with, with literature, with music, with the arts. He could have had a handle, or his contemporaries could have had a handle on anything. So anyone born after that would have already been out of control, and we know we're overwhelmed. So I can never have a handle on everything. I can never have a handle even on everything I'm interested in. So it has to be saying, well, within the context of my lifetime, what can I do, and how can I be all right with doing as much as I can do?
So how can you?
Well, I think that it's got to be. It probably comes back to being present, rather than thinking, "Oh, I'm reading this one book, and now I'm like on the bloody playlist, I'm queuing up the next one to come on." Just being present with that one and enjoying that, and knowing that I'm always always making progress. I have this little analogy. When in our house in France, we have lots and lots and lots of rubble, lots of detritus, and you always finding things. So you can imagine, doing a bit of weeding, and you maybe come up with 3 kilos or 4 kilos of old tiles that someone's dumped there in the 50s or the 1850s or whatever. So they get bagged up, and at some point they go to the dump, and I think I never have to handle that again. It's like that is gone, all right, there might be another bloody million of them out there, but that's gone. So I think why I mentioned that analogy, I think it's like knowing that when I've read that book, I have developed, I've made progress, I've got some understanding. It doesn't matter that there's a whole, the equivalent of fields of rubble out there. Actually, I've done that bit of learning, and I think it's seeing that all the time. And I probably need to find a switch. I probably need to find a way of turning off this internal intimidation voice, the judgment and all of that around this topic. When I fuck things up, I can judge myself fine because it's a mess. But actually, the fact that I've got books waiting to be read, it's that I don't want to judge myself on, and that is, I think nonsense is definitely the word. It doesn't make any sense, and it sounds a bit lala, and I think I just need to sort of reframe that as actually it's not, it's just quirky, and it's quite yes. And I could tell people, and nice people would laugh at me, and judgmental people would judge me, So I have to see it as quirky rather than anything else.
Yeah. So how are you going to use this thinking?
Well, I think I'm gonna walk the dog a bit, definitely.
That dog gets lots of walking.
He does, right. He's off for a haircut now, so he'll be very happy for a walk in a while. I think I'm going to almost like stop setting myself tasks. I've like that idea of I must clear that bookcase. I think it's just like I just go back to that being present. What do I want to read now? What is it I want to look at now? What's useful, what's important, and sort of accept the chaos. Sort of accept there's always going to be a pile here that I need to work through. Notice my sense of satisfaction when I crack on and I get through, and I've turned a book into either a summary set of notes, something that can go to the charity shop, something I can pass on, something that I put in my bag and take with me to training. I know that I get a lot of satisfaction about that, but also know that as soon as I get that emptied, I'll fill it up again. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like the only time that's going to stop is when I have to stop. So it's almost like just accept that that's part of life, like having food in the cupboard is part of life. I think that's a really nice analogy. But that's what we need. We need food in the cupboard, and I need books on my shelf.
They are your food in the cupboard, aren't they? They are the food for you.
Yeah. The idea that I'd walk into, I've read all my books now. It's like I can't even imagine that.
So can you do that?
I can play with it.
I'm so glad you didn't say I can try.
No, I can play. I think I want to play with it. I don't think I necessarily want to talk to anyone else about it or make it a commitment and explore obstacles in that type of I must go and have a word with the boss type of action. But it's like, okay, I just want to notice. I think I want to notice my attitude towards this and see if the attitude towards this stops being so intimidatory internally. I think that would be hugely important.
And I wonder what you can say to yourself if you notice the intimidation coming back. It's a bit like gremlins, isn't it? What is it you can say if you do notice that?
It's a bit like it's that first line of The Sound of Silence, isn't it? Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah.
It's which I've never really thought about actually. I think that is Churchill used to say, didn't he? He said, he would. I don't know if he welcomed his mad dog, his black dog, his depression when he came back, but he certainly noticed it, and I think it's noticing it. I mean, Carol Dweck talks about naming your chimp, she calls hers Dwayne, I call mine Nana Betty. It's that type of internal helpful dialogue. And I think it's not like that. It's not like the bad parrot on the shoulder, but there's elements of it. And I think it's just seeing it. It's like, okay, well, of course you're here. Of course you're here. You've been with me forever,
and we'll always stay with you.
Exactly, my mum was a frustrated intellectual. My stepmum, an intellectual snob. My dad, a sort of a rabid anti-intellectual. So of course there's a load of jumbly around there. So I think expect it. Actually, it's that expect to hear that voice rather than the first time the voice turns up. It means it's a failure. Like, expect the voice,
and then you'll do something with it.
Yeah.
So we started our conversation today about looking at these 5 elements, and we focused on the 4.
Yeah.
Where are you now with this whole piece before we complete? What else do we need to do?
Okay, well, I think it's quite important, actually. I think I shoved the 5th one, the one to do with other people, that goes into a different topic, and that's fine, and I can see there. One seems to have really emerged as the intimidatory one, and that's really good, and I can see that. The other 3 are, I think they're just funny, really. I mean, they are, like, they're ridiculous. They're funny in a way. They're funny in the way of, like, oh, blimey, God, they can have a really big impact on me, but not really on anyone else, because as soon as one of these things sort of emerges, I get an email saying, oh, I thought I'd get feedback from because I haven't done it, or it's wrong. And I'd almost sort of sit up all night to get that done, just get that out straight away. So I know I'm not going to stumble in that. It's for me. I think I want to just, with these things, I want to diarise, and I want to see, can I do some of these things without being nagged, without looking for praise? Look at me, I tied it up. Ooh,
I put my tools away.
yeah. I'll have a star now. But really, and starting to see and starting to notice what happens. But I think I have to make peace with the idea that this is this is how I like to be. I like to be full of energy and action and stuff. And some of these things are a paradox, and they don't have to have a big negative impact. And I think that I can start thinking about identifying things like the double checking. There probably are some things that, if I thought about it a bit more, might be a bit more obvious, and then it won't be double checking, it'll just be doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's that type of stuff that needs to just, it's like with the last session, there are habits that can emerge. So I think habits and beliefs is what's happened here today.
So is that a good place for us to?
Actually, really good. No, it's been, really interesting, fascinating. Yes. Yeah, no, good place to start. It
just came into my head that to some degree, the 3 other things are a byproduct of that one that intimidates you. And by you just taking a bit more notice around that, I wonder if the others will be less of anyway.
I think it's eminently possible. It's like, actually, I'm not a hoarder. I'm not one of those people who's sort of getting so overwhelmed and I'm not attached to these things. It's just there's definitely something underneath all of this that is a big belief thing, and then these are the spill out into what happens. Minute in and minute out.
So I look forward to hearing how this progresses, how this filters through in our next session, perhaps, which would be good.